We are going live. Hare Krishna. Radhika Lokananda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premananda. Okay, we are live on Facebook. And here we go. Okay. Good to see everybody. Right. And here we are, ready for our Bhagavad Gita class in the evening here, and it's in the morning in New Zealand, Australia, and Fiji. And in India, it's the middle of the night, and Europe, it's the middle of the night too. Okay, good to see everybody. So we'll start by chanting Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Malaba Kiri Bharadhauti Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhauti Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharadhauti Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhauti Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Osthatana Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Avaya Chanana, the Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Avran Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadha, Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagadasami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Go. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Srinivadi Paschatade Shatarni So Om Ganati Miranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So now we are continuing with our Bhagavad Gita study, and we are still on the 9th chapter. So we'll go ahead. And we're in text 9 of the 9th chapter. Here we go. Okay. Nachamam tani karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya udasana vadhasinam saktam teshu karmashu. Na, never. Cha, also. Mam, me. Tani, all those karmani activities. Nibadnanti, bind, dhananjaya, conquer riches, udasinavat, as neutral, asinam, situated as saktam, without attraction, teshu, for those, karmashu. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though, whoops, uh-oh. It's, that happens sometimes. Here we go. That's it. Seated as though neutral. So Prabhupada explains that one should not think in this connection the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no engagement. In his spiritual world, he is always engaged. In the Brahma Samhita, the 5th chapter, text 6, it is stated, At amaramash tasyasta prakritya na samaganaha. He is always involved in his eternal blissful spiritual activities, but he has nothing to do with these material activities. So in other words, Krishna is not bound by anything in this material world. He's not subject to the law of cause and effect. And he's always engaged in having a good time. Material activities are being carried out by his different potencies. The Lord is always neutral in the material activities of the created world. This neutrality is mentioned here with the word udasina vat. Although he has control over every minute detail of material activities, he is sitting as if neutral. The example can be given of a high court judge sitting on his bench. By his order, so many things are happening. Someone is being hanged. Someone is being put into jail. Someone is being awarded a huge amount of wealth, but still he is neutral. He has nothing to do with all that gain and loss. Similarly, the Lord is always neutral, although he has his hand in every sphere of activity. In the Vedanta Sutra 2.134, it is stated, Vishamya na grinye na. He is not situated in the dualities of this material world. He is transcendental to these dualities. Nor is he attached to the creation and annihilation of this material world. The living entities take their different forms in the various species of life according to their past deeds, and the Lord doesn't interfere with them. So another point is that Krishna is neutral. Elsewhere in the Gita, he states, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dvesho stinapriha. That I'm equal to everybody. Nobody is especially a friend. Nobody is my enemy. In other words, everybody has an equal right to be Krishna conscious. And Krishna says that, of course, Yeyatamam prapajante tam sataiva bhajamyam. That's 4th chapter of the Gita. That as someone approaches me, Krishna says, I reciprocate accordingly. But he has nothing to do with anything in this material world. He doesn't need anything in this material world. He's completely independent, as we mentioned before. He gets whatever he wants, whenever he wants it, up to karma. These are all concepts I've mentioned the last few days. So, let me turn off my phone so we don't get disturbed by the phone. Anyway, so the Lord doesn't interfere. And he has his agents to do everything in this material world. He doesn't even have to bother with anything. Next verse is very important. One of the main verses in the Gita. Maya jakshena prakriti suyate sa chana chanam hitunanena kontiya jagat viparivartate. Maya by me, Adyakshena by superintendence, Prakritiki, material nature, Suvyate manifests both Chara, Acharam, the moving and non-moving, Hetuna, for the reason, Anena, this, Kontiya, O son of Kunti, Jagat, the cosmic manifestation, Viparivaptate, is working. So translation, this material nature, which is one of my energies. Remember we talked about different energies Krishna has? Krishna has the material nature energy, the spiritual nature energy, and us energy. That's called the marginal energy. So basically, there's these three different categories of energies. And the verse in Sanskrit is Vishnu Shakti Prokta Kshetra Gyakyatata Pra Vidyakarma Sanganya Tritira Shakti Ishyate. What does that verse say? It says Lord Vishnu has three energies. Paraprakriti, that means the transcendental energy. Then Paraprakriti, and then the Jiva soul, which is the marginal potency of the Lord, which is also transcendental. We are also transcendental, but because we're small transcendental, we can be influenced by the material energy. So, Vishnu Shakti Paraprabhya, Kshetragyakya, and we are described as the knowers of this body, Kshetragya. Kshetra means a field, and we're going to actually get more into that term later on in the Gita. And Gya means to know, like Jnana, etc., or Vijnana. So Kshetragya means we know this body. And right now, that's all we know. See, not too much more. Little philosophy. Kshetragyakya Tatapara. We are also transcendental. And then Avidya Karma Sanganya, the third potency is this material nature, which is known as avidya karma. So let's analyze those words. Vidya. Vidya means knowledge. Avidya means ignorance. Remember we talked about how you put an A in front of the word? You get the opposite. Avidya. Avidya. Like karma, akarma. So avidya. So this material nature is ignorant work. Avidya karma. The word karma means to work in this particular context. So this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti. Because that's Arjuna. Producing all moving and non-moving beings. Means plants and buggies and human beings and any sort of living entity. Under its rule, in other words, the laws of nature. Like Prabhupada would say, if you have laws of nature, you should see who has written those laws of nature. Okay. Under its rule, that means the laws of nature, this manifestation, that means this world, is created and annihilated, that's destroyed, again and again. So Prabhupada explains it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all the activities in the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the supreme will and the background of this material manifestation. But the management is being conducted by material nature. Krishna doesn't have to manage this place. Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. God the Father. I mean, that's a very small understanding of God, simply having him as the Father. He's a lot more. He's the Father, the Mother, the Creator of everything. Whatever you say, whatever you think, he's that. The Father gives seeds to the womb of the mother of the child. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects the living entities into the womb of the material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species according to their last desires and activities. We talked about that before. That's his glance is Lord Shiva, and that is Shambhu. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activated, and everything is created immediately. And I think we've described this before in previous classes. Because he glances over material nature, there's undoubtedly activity on the part of the Supreme Lord, but he has nothing to do with the manifestation of the material world directly. In other words, as I mentioned, he doesn't come in contact with matter, with earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. The example is given in the Smriti literature. So what do we mean by Smriti? There's two types of Vaishnava literatures or Vedic literatures. One is the Shruti, referring to the four original Vedas, Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajur Veda. And sometimes the Upanishads are considered part of the Smriti. And then the Shruti means things like the Itihasas, that means the histories, and the Puranas like the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So in the original Vedic literature, the old Vedic literatures, it says, when there's a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person, yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. It's true. There's a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with the material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains by his wish. That's the Icha Shakti, the desire, potency of the Lord. However, if one becomes his devotee in the material world, Krishna takes special interest. In those cases, Krishna intercedes. And he has many statements like that. He intercedes in the lives of his devotees who are here in this world. And he protects us, especially. In summary, material nature without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do anything. That's the technical point, is that's the pradhana, the unmanifest stage of the three modes of material nature. Until Krishna injects energy into it, doesn't do anything. Just like you have a fan. Before you plug it in, it's connected to the powerhouse. Doesn't do anything. It just sits there, lies there, whatever. Fans don't lie. Yet the Supreme Personality of Godhead is detached from all material activities. That's his nature. Now, here's another very important verse about the Lord's nature. That's called ontology. Ontology means basically the nature of Krishna. But sort of like an indirect and direct. Avajananti mam muta manushim tanamashritam param bhavam jananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Avajananti, mam, me, muta, foolish men, manushim, in a human form, tanum, a body, ashritam, assuming, param, transcendental, bhavam, nature, ajanataha, not knowing, my, bhuta, of everything that be, maha, ishvaram, the supreme proprietor. Translation, fools deride me. So that the word that Krishna uses for fool is a heavy word. Mudha is like someone saying that someone is an ass. Just like sometimes devotees, they shouldn't do this because it's not nice to call someone a Mudha. If someone is just like working hard, day duty, night duty, just paying off his mortgages, never gets a chance to do anything except for sleep at home. Otherwise, he's working to pay for the home. Devotees would say he's a mudha. Anyway, we should not call people names. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. In other words, Krishna has a spiritual form. He comes down in a spiritual form. He doesn't have a material body. Although he looks like us. Lord, he has no veins, no the stuff that we have in our body. His body is Satchidananda, Vigraha. So he walks amongst us, as they say. And so people think, I'm just mundane like the rest of us, maybe it's Brahman that assumed the human form. It's not. From the other explanations of the previous verse in the chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. The personality of Godhead, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation, destruction, of the complete cosmic manifestation, cannot be a human being. Yet there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. That means he's the Supreme Controller, and his name is Krishna. He is the Supreme Lord. And even sometimes we find great personalities think that Krishna's just a talkative boy. For example, you have Indra, who's in charge. Basically, he's like the main administrator under Lord Brahma. And he was getting really upset that the residents of Vrindavan were not wanting to worship him. In other words, pay a bribe to him, what's called Indra Puja. And so he thought they're being influenced by this talkative kid, this little kid. Yeah, maybe cute, but who is he? And then so Indra thought, I'll teach these guys a lesson. I'm going to just create a thunderstorm unlike anyone's ever seen before, except at the time of the cosmic dissolution. And I'm going to inundate the whole land of Vrindavan, see how these people smile and think afterwards. They'll never give up their worship of me after this. So he just hurricane, cyclone, whatever, lightning, all rolled into one. And Krishna just steps over, picks up this giant hill, Govardhan Hill, with the pinky of his left hand, not even his right hand, not even a big finger, but the pinky of his left hand, picks it up, holds it aloof for a week, and teaches Indra a lesson. So even you find great personalities like Indra thinking at a particular time that Krishna is an ordinary person. They just become overcome by pride. And that pride covers their intelligence so that they think Krishna is an ordinary person. Even the story I read recently about Krishna taking a specific flower, the Parijata flower from the heavenly planets, and Indra, before that, was very grateful because Krishna really saved his hide. I killed a big demon named Bomasura. Then Indra, just overcome with pride, he attacked Krishna. Of course, he got defeated. So people have that tendency. People just can't understand when they see, here's this little coward boy with his girlfriend. He's God? How's that possible? Well, God wants to enjoy. You think he's going to sit, if he's in charge of everything, has so much, all the opulences, all beauty, all fame, all renunciation, all wealth, all knowledge. You think he's just going to sit around and mope all day long? Or sit around and just watch you do your garbage all day long? No, he's going to have a good time. And so he has a good time by interacting in a very personal way, intimate way with his devotees. There are many Ishwaras, controllers, and one appears greater than another. In the ordinary management of affairs in the material world, we find some official director, and above him there is a secretary. That's not his secretary. Prabhupada's talking about like the English government. There's a Secretary of Defense. We also have that in America. And above him a minister, and above him a president. Tell me all about it. Each of them is a controller, but one is controlled by another. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that Krishna is the supreme controller. There are many controllers, undoubtedly, both in the material and spiritual world, but Krishna is the supreme controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna, and his body is Satchidananda, non-material. So even amongst the animals, there are certain animals that are controllers. For example, you go to Vrindavan, and there are monkeys there. And there is one big he-monkey with a bunch of she-monkeys. He has his little harem. He has his little group, his herd. And he's the controller of his herd. If any other monkey tries to come, he attacks or makes faces or something like that. But unfortunately, his controlling is not absolute. Because when one of his, I hate to mention this, one of his sons grows up, he kicks Papa out of the nest and takes over Papa's wives, unless they're too old for him. So you see that being a controller in this world is just very temporary. It's like we've been through so many presidents of the United States, they've been controllers, and they leave, and then they have no more power. I'm just waiting. So anyways, so Krishna is the supreme controller. He never loses his position. He's not voted out. And actually, Prabhupada, oh yeah, this is an interesting thing that Prabhupada told the Tamal Krishna Maharaj, which I can relate, and I think many of you heard of it before, that we're all thinking we're the controllers. That's our mentality. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, a great pure devotee, disciple of Prabhupada, who passed away a number of years ago, he was a really good manager. And Prabhupada, in order to train him up in management, told him something once to sort of bring him down to earth. Because in management, we do have the tendency, we do actually have the tendency of, someone's saying to the chat window. Oh, sorry. Mayapur corrected me. It gives you any happiness to know a group of monkeys may be commonly referred to as a tribe or a troop. Thank you for that information. So getting back to the story. So anyway, so he was sitting with Prabhupada in the temple, and he's a big manager. And so Prabhupada, in order just to show him and teach him about having the right perspective in life, he said, when Krishna creates this material world, he breathes out, and there's innumerable universes. And one of those little tiny universes, we're in that little tiny universe, out of many unlimited universes. Okay. And in that little tiny universes, there's billions of billions or almost unlimited planets. And amongst all those billions and billions or unlimited planets, there's one planet Earth, and we're on that planet. And so, on that planet Earth, there's many, many cities. Many, many cities. And out of those innumerable cities on the Earth planet, there's one city called Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, there's many, 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 many streets. And out of those innumerable streets, there's one street, I guess it was Watsika Avenue. He said there's one street that we're on, and that's called, Watsika Avenue, or Venice Avenue. But anyway. And he said, and on that street, there's many, 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 many houses. And one of those houses is our temple, and we're sitting. And inside there, that house, there is one Tamal Krishna who's thinking he's the supreme controller. So that was it. Tamal Krishna Maharaj himself tells that story. So we all have that tendency. We're thinking that we're the supreme controller, like that. Ishwaraham. This is also in the chapter Divine and Demoniac Natures, which we'll get to later on, where our consciousness is described by Krishna. Ishwaraham aham bogi. Siroham Balavan Sukhi. That means, I think I'm the controller. I'm the enjoyer. Ishwaraham aham bogi. Siroham, I'm perfect. I'm powerful. Sukhi, I'm happy. So it ain't so. It ain't so. So, anyway, in the 5th chapter of the Gita, which we've already touched upon, text 29, Krishna says that if one wants to be peaceful, one has to recognize him as the supreme controller. That verse again is Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. One understands that Krishna is the enjoyer, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, the supreme enjoyer, the controller of everything. Suridam Sarvabhutanam, the friend of all living entities, he can actually be peaceful. So that's the peace formula, which we went over many classes ago. We are actually on the 61st class today, so that's making progress. Material bodies cannot perform the wonderful acts described in previous verses. His body is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. In other words, material bodies can't emanate many universes. We can emanate some sweat, some obnoxious substance, but we cannot emanate so many universes. We cannot pick up a hill, Govardhan Hill, with the pinky of our hand. I don't even know if I could pick up this microphone I'm looking at with my pinky. Although he is not a common man, the foolish deride him and consider him to be a man. His body is called here Manushim because he is acting just like a man. We are created in the image of God. It's not that God is created in the image of us. It's not like anthropomorphic, like many atheists say. A friend of Arjuna is a politician involved in the battle, etc. In so many ways, he is acting just like an ordinary man. But actually, his body is Satchidananda Vigraha, eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. That's from the Brahma Samhita again, the first verse in the 5th chapter. Eternal bliss and knowledge, absolute. This is confirmed in the Vedic language also, Satchidananda Rupaya Krishna. That means Satchidananda, same thing. Eternity, bliss, and knowledge, the form possessed by Krishna. I offer my obeisance to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who is the eternal blissful form of knowledge. Also, you can understand Krishna has a form of eternity and bliss. Gopal Tapani Upanishad 1.1. There are other descriptions in other Vedic language also. Tam Ekam Govinda. You are Govinda, the pleasure of the senses and the cows. Satchit Ananda Vigraham. And your form is transcendental, full of knowledge, bliss, and eternality. Gopal Tapani Upanishad. So Prabhupada is pulling out all these quotes to prove his point. Because when one is, of course, this is talking again about epistemology. How do we know what we know? So when one is actually making spiritual points, one has to give reference to them. Not just, I think the soul is eternal. Oh, I think we're reincarnating. You know, your thinking, or it may be, is not very useful. So you have to give reference. Just like Prabhupada gave you the example. When you go, if you're a lawyer, to the court and you're arguing a case, you have to cite legal precedent. That means cases that came before. You have to actually talk about the law. You have to say, Your Honor, in law book number 54, page 56, line 32, it says da-da-da. You can't just say, Your Honor, he's a good guy. He should get off. You can't do that. So Prabhupada is throwing these quotes out to show his authority, to prove his authority. Not because he has to prove his authority, but that's for our benefit, so we don't get cheated by others. So we can go out and talk to others, and people will ask us, how did you get your knowledge? And then we can quote some verses. We don't say, it's my opinion, or that's how I was taught in the Krishna consciousness movement. No. That you may say in the beginning. But really it's important to be able to give some references, or at least point the person in the direction of where he or she can find the references. That's very important. Otherwise, I mean, it's just my opinion, your opinion, someone else's opinion, this religion, this spiritual path, that spiritual path. You know, come on. Everybody comes up with their own particular spiritual path. I mean, even there was one guy who came up with a whole yoga system of sweating. I mean, I don't have to do that yoga system. It's very hot out. Now it's raining, of course. But this time of year, it's very hot, and I sweat. So I'm doing sweat yoga every day. I know it's not sweat yoga. But it's just like, you know, you just concoct all these different types of yoga. They have beer yoga. And that's not my name. Beer yoga. They actually have beer yoga. Unbelievable. Marijuana yoga, beer. I'm not just making these things up. Wine yoga. Sex yoga. You know, you could just make up anything you want in the name of spirituality. And there'll be so many people who'll be ready to follow you, to be cheated, because the nature of this material world is we make mistakes, and also we have a tendency to cheat others. So be careful. If someone says something to you, ask for the references. The Vedic literatures are the references. That's why we have checks and balances in Krishna consciousness. What is that? Guru, Shastra, Sadhu. Spiritual master says something, has to be backed up by Shastra. Shastra means the book, or Vedic literatures, let's say. And sadhu, that means other great devotees, should corroborate that. It shouldn't be just like relative knowledge. And like everyone's going around in their religions and in their spiritual paths, just relative stuff. You know, it just started, they had some realization, someone took some LSD, had, you know, God revealed himself, or, you know, whatever, revealed himself. And it's stupid. Don't be stupid. That's why Prabhupada is giving us all these references to verify what he is saying, the points he's making. Despite the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna's body, its full bliss and knowledge, there are so many scholars and commentators of Bhagavad Gita who deride Krishna as an ordinary man. The scholar may be born an extraordinary man due to his previous good work, but this conception of Sri Krishna is due to a poor fund of knowledge. Therefore, he is called Mudha, as Prabhupada is saying. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying directly, he is an ass. For only foolish persons consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being. The foolish consider Krishna an ordinary human being because they do not know the confidential activities of the Supreme Lord and his different energies. They do not know that Krishna's body is a symbol of complete knowledge and bliss, that he is the proprietor of everything that be, and that he can award liberation to anyone. Because they do not know that Krishna has so many transcendental qualifications, they deride him. Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Lord of Godhead, Supreme Personality of Godhead, in this material world is a manifestation of his internal energy. He is the master of the material energy, as has been explained in several places. Mama Maya Durachya. Mama Maya Durachya means it's very difficult to overcome Krishna's energy. That's us. We're not Krishna's material energy, but it's very difficult for us to overcome it. It's like escaping from Sing Sing. Sing Sing is a prison. You don't have to know what it is, but it's an old prison that basically almost no one escaped from. He claims that the material energy, although very powerful, is under his control. And whoever surrenders unto him can get out of the control of his material energy. If a soul surrendered to Krishna can get out of the influence of the material energy, then how can the Supreme Lord, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the whole cosmic nature, have a material body like us? You know, it's probably just showing something that's illogical to think if simply by surrendering to Krishna to get out of the material energy, how can you think Krishna is under the material energy? So this conception of Krishna is complete foolishness. Foolish persons, however, cannot conceive that the personality of God in Krishna, appearing just like an ordinary man, can be the controller of all the atoms and the gigantic manifestation of the universal form. The biggest and the minutest are beyond their conception, so they cannot imagine that a form like that of a human being can simultaneously control the infinite and the minute. Actually, although he is controlling the infinite and the finite, he is apart from all this manifestation. It is clearly stated concerning his yogam aishram, that means his opulence of yoga, his inconceivable transcendental energy, that he can control the infinite and the finite simultaneously, and that he can remain aloof from them. That's God. So to say that God cannot appear like an ordinary person means that you're taking powers away from God. You're saying he's not God. Because if someone is God, he should be able to do anything. He should be able to make himself smaller than the smallest, bigger than the biggest, be present everywhere, and be present nowhere simultaneously. The Jincha Beta top of philosophy. Although the foolish cannot imagine how Krishna, who appears just like a human being, can control the infinite and the finite, those who are pure devotees accept this, for they know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in other words, we don't know how he's doing it, except it's by his will. I mean, what's the mechanism? It's his will. That's it. I mean, you just don't know how, but you know why. Why does he control this material world or create this material world? For us, the criminals. To rectify us. That's it. Because Krishna wants us. He loves us so much. He wants us back with him. So he's giving us a perfect program of rectification. And, a school of hard knocks, as they say, and that's this material world. Therefore, they completely surrender unto him and engage in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord. There are many controversies between the impersonalists and the personalists about the Lord's appearance as a human being. Personalist means basically everything's just energy, and energy assumes a form temporarily. But if we consult the Bhagavad, and the personalists think that Krishna has an eternal form and he manifests energy. But if we consult Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the authoritative text for understanding the science of Krishna, then we can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary man, although he appeared on this earth as an ordinary human. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, when the sages headed by Shonaka inquired about the activities of Krishna, they said, Kritaman kila karmani saha ramena keshava atimartyani bhagavan buddhaka patamanushaha. Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. That's first canto, first chapter, text 20. The Lord's appearance as a man bewilders the foolish. No human being could perform wonderful acts that Krishna performed while he was present on this earth. When Krishna appeared before his father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, he appeared with 4 hands, and after prayers of the parents, he transformed himself into an ordinary child. He also appeared with jewelry. How many kids appear with jewelry? That would probably be disastrous for the parents or mother if a kid was wearing jewelry when he was born. As stated in the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 3rd chapter, text 46, Bahuva Bhagavata Shishu. He became just like an ordinary child, an ordinary human being. So in other words, he first appeared with 4 hands, he illuminated the whole prison house in which he appeared, and then, whoosh, like a little baby. Now here again, it is indicated that the Lord's appearance as an ordinary human being is one of the features of his transcendental body. In other words, he can appear any way that he wants with his transcendental body. Sometimes he appears in different species of life. Sometimes he appears half man, half lion. Sometimes he appears as a fish. Sometimes he appears as a big transcendental pig, a boar. He can appear in any, and he does appear in every species of life. And he can appear in various human form incarnations too. We have Rama, of course we have Krishna, and so many human forms, Prithu Maharaj. In the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, also it is stated that Arjuna prayed to see Krishna's form of 4 hands. This was after Arjuna saw the universal form. Tenaiva Rupena Chatur Bhujena. After revealing this form, Krishna, when petitioned by Arjuna, again assumed his original human-like form, Manushanam Rupam. These different features of the Supreme Lord are certainly not those of an ordinary human being. Let me tell one story from Braj, from Vrindavan. One time Krishna was hiding from the gopis, and he thought, yeah, a good way to hide from the gopis is just to put another 2 arms there, or manifest another 2 arms. That's his Vishnu form. Okay, so he got 2 arms, and, more on reverent form. So he was walking around Vrindavan, and the gopis who were looking for Krishna, and Krishna was hiding from them, saw him, and they recognized, not that it was Krishna, they recognized it is Krishna, but under Yogamaya, the Lord's spiritual bewildering potency, they thought, oh, here's God. Okay, God, please accept our obeisances. And they said, God, we just want one thing from you. Tell us where Krishna is. This is how much love the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna. They're not concerned whether he's God or not. Of course, he is God. But they're not concerned because there's so much overflowing love that the position of the person they love is inconsequential. Just like if someone loves someone very much, it doesn't matter to them that they're the President of the United States. I should never use that example. It does not matter to them that they're a rich man or a poor man. It doesn't really matter. They're just blind. Love is blind. So in the same way, the gopis' love is blind. All right, so the gopis, they asked Vishnu, where's Krishna? Basically, I don't know. He went that way, So basically, he said, I don't know. And then the chief of the gopis, that is Srimati Radharani, came, and because of her love, Krishna could not maintain the extra two arms anymore. That shows how Krishna's, another story, how Krishna's Isha Shakti becomes overcome, or Krishna's potency of having his will fulfilled becomes overcome by prema. So the two arms disappeared. The extra two arms disappeared. And he tried to keep them and tried to make them appear. They disappeared. And she discovered Krishna's trick. And there's actually a temple to that particular pastime that, let us say, manifests that particular pastime. It's called the Chaturbhuj Temple. Chaturbhuj means four arms. And that temple is there near Govardhan. And by the mercy of some of my disciples, I was able to visit that temple. And by the mercy of my disciples, I even took pictures of that deity, the Chaturbhuj deity. And I showed it on the slideshow, Govardhan slideshow. Beautiful, beautiful deity. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there meditating near that Chaturbhuj deity. And there's Lakshmi well there and so many other things. So, anyway, when you go, some of you join us in Braj, you will see those different things and just be immersed in Krishna Prema with the rest of us. Hopefully, we can go there again soon, someday. So, anyway, some of those who deride Krishna, who are infected with the Mayavadi philosophy, Mayavadi means Krishna's body is material, or Maya, or illusion, quote the following verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:29-21 to prove that Krishna is just an ordinary man. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhuta abhutatma va stata, said the Supreme is present in every living entity. We should better take note of this particular verse from the Vaishnavacharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, instead of following the interpretation of unauthorized persons who deride Krishna. Jiva Goswami, commenting on this verse, says that Krishna in his plenary expansion is Paramatma, situated in the moving and non-moving entities as the supersoul. We've described that before. I think all of you know that. Even new devotees know that. So any neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archamurti, the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities, is uselessly worshiping the form of the Lord in the temple. Now, remember we talked about the three types of devotees? Okay? Kanishta, the lowest type, was the third type. The Majjhima, the second type. The Uttama, the first type. So what was the quality of the Kanishta, the materialistic devotee? He sees Krishna in the temple. But if he sees Krishna just in the temple, and he doesn't consider that Krishna is in everyone's heart, and that everyone is carriers, a temple of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna, then that person's worship is like offering oblations to ashes. That's a description given, I believe, by Lord Kapila Dev in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, if you want to please Krishna, you have to understand his transcendental nature. You can't just think he's material. There are three kinds of devotees of the Lord. Now here, Prabhupada's explaining the same thing we went over before. The reason Prabhupada goes over the same thing over and over and over again, so it'll go through our thick skulls. There are three kinds of devotees of the Lord, and the neophyte is in the lowest stage. The third type, called Kanishta, the neophyte devotee gives more attention to the deity in the temple than to other devotees. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur warns that this sort of mentality should be corrected. A devotee should see, I'm going to say must see, that because Krishna is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, everybody is the embodiment or temple of the Supreme Lord. That's what I just said. So as one offers respect to the temple of the Lord, he should similarly properly respect each and every body in which Paramatma dwells. Everyone should therefore be given proper respect and should not be neglected. And the tilak that we put on simply verifies or signifies this. This body is a temple of God. And we say the different names of Krishna when we put the tilak on, because that's the body. It's a temple. It's meant to be used for God. Now, if you use a temple for some other purpose, like if you use a temple to do some illicit activity, or you go in the temple room and you just start watching mundane movies. If you can watch mundane movies, do it at home. Chill out. But don't go in the temple room and start watching The Matrix. It's not appropriate. You should have a Maya room in your house. There are also many impersonalists who deride temple worship. In other words, Krishna is in the temple. So it's interesting. Sometimes you get people who, like immature devotees, who say Krishna is only in the temple. And then you got the impersonalists who say God's everywhere, but he's not in the temple. Prabhupada's going to talk about this. They say that since God is everywhere, why should one restrict himself to temple worship? But if God is everywhere, is he not in the temple or in the deity? So you got these two opposite extremes. The immature devotees, God's only in the temple. And the Mayavadi impersonalists, God is everything, but he's not in the temple. What's the use of going to the temple? Although the personalist and the impersonalist will fight with one another perpetually, a perfect devotee in Krishna consciousness knows that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality Godhead, he is all-pervading as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. In other words, they both have some aspect of the truth. Both the immature devotee and the impersonalist understand some aspect of the absolute truth. The immature devotee says God's in the temple. Very true. The impersonalist says God is everywhere. Very true. So you put them together and you get the Achincha Beta Beta type of philosophy. It's complete. Otherwise, you're incomplete. You're only taking a part of the truth. That God is in one place? No, God is everywhere, and he's also in one place simultaneously in the temple and also in Goloka Vrindavan, enacting his various pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan. So that's a devotee, at least the Majjhima Adhikari, that second stage, the first stage, understands the Uttama Adhikari is the first stage, understands this point. God's in the temple, we worship the deity form, and by meditating on the deity form, we begin to develop a service attitude and appreciate Krishna's transcendental beauty and appreciate that Krishna is a person. If we did not have depictions, visual depictions of Krishna, which are non-different from Krishna, because Krishna manifests through the material energy, he can actually transform matter to spirit, also spirit to matter if he wants. And if we did not have those depictions, we would not be able to conceive of the point that God is a person. Very important principle, because we're a visual culture. In the original Vedic culture, let's say you go all the way back to Satya Yuga, they didn't need deity worship because in sound vibration, this mantra murti amurtikam, that the sound vibration, they were able to perceive the visual just by chanting. And if we could chant purely, we could perceive the visual too. We would have what's called a spurti. A spurti means like, not quite a realization, but just like a visualization or some revelation. Let's say revelation would be a more appropriate word. Although his personal abode is Goloka Vrindavan, and he is staying there by his different manifestations of energy and by his plenary expansion, plenary means Paramatma and Garbhadakshay Vishnu, all the other Vishus, he is present everywhere in all parts of the material and spiritual creation. I know this is something that Prabhupada keeps going over and over and over again, because it's very important. We should be able to identify when people or which people are speaking about these things and be able to counter it so we don't get confused. Very, very important. Next verse is very important, but we are going to take questions now, of course. It is time. Got quite a few people here. Let me take you off of mute. Give me 1 second. And you will be able to unmute yourselves as of now. So who has a question? Okay, Radha Sundari, why don't you ask something?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev, Dandavat Pranam.
Good to hear you.
Whole glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. Gurudev, I just wanted to ask you a question about how can we deal with the people, how you were saying that they think that they are supreme, and they are controllers. So how can we deal with someone like that? Because I have got someone at my work, and he is one of the supervisors, and he always trying to control people, and and I just like don't know how to deal with him sometimes. I've told him that you're not a supreme person. I have told him, but he just likes to control everybody and anything and everything.
Yeah. Welcome to the material world. Let me just do that so people can see it. That's actually a very good point. Actually, there's this verse, Upadesho Himurkanam Prakopayana Shantiye, that if you give a fool some good instruction, he becomes ashanta. He becomes disturbed. So basically, just give him some prasadam. Just every time he tries
Oh,
to talk, just stuff a sweet ball in his mouth or something.
I just pray to Lord Shingadev every day, like I just keep away from him because
Yeah, so keep
I have
away.
told.
You can't really change people like that. As aspiring second class devotees, we avoid people who are like that, avoid trying to preach to people like that, and we go only with the innocent. So we just look for innocent people. We have to sort of sift out and see who is actually, ripe and innocent. The
Because he
people
has
are
double
born.
person.
Otherwise,
He
it's a
ha-
waste of time.
yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. There was a question on chat. Is why it says in the purport that how Krishna is a symbol, which is really interesting. There was a statement by Prabhupada in the purport about Krishna being a symbol. Uh, yes, because Krishna is real, but he also he teaches us something by manifesting his pastimes. It's not his pastimes have hmm, teaching purposes for us, uh, as well as being something that Krishna did. And sometimes Krishna uses symbolism, and Krishna, just like, all right, let's talk about the demons that attacked Krishna during Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. They symbolize different anarthas. Like we're talking about Palambasura in the Bhagavatam class right now. Palambasura was a really bad demon, and he took the position of a coward boy, and he represents lust and anger and greed and pride and all those other nice things. So he symbolizes that, but at the same time, he's a person,
Mm.
just like me. I symbolize. What do I symbolize? I symbolize. I symbolize a follower of Prabhupada. Yeah, I'm a representative, symbolize who is a follower of Prabhupada, but I'm also a person at the same time. So you can actually symbolize something without being just a symbol. You can say if someone is just a symbol, that means they're actually not a person. But never the statement is that Krishna is just a symbol. He symbolizes certain things, and he acts metaphorically sometimes, and he acts analogically sometimes. So that's life. That's why I probably use the word symbol. Although that's a little confusing sometimes, the word symbol. So who else has a question?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. This is Rishikesh.
Oh, like Rishikesh, the controller of the senses.
Gurudev, I just wanted to understand the difference between ether and space.
Between ether and ether is space. I explained that this morning in Bhagavatam class.
Okay.
Like that's what it's just space. Like this morning I was talking a little scientifically in Bhagavatam class. I think also yesterday I did too, in yesterday's evening class. How you have this earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the Pancha Mahabhuta, the five gross elements. And when I was young and studying nuclear physics, the scientists, in order to try to disprove the existence of ether, did this one experiment with, I guess it was intersecting light beams or laser beams. I don't remember exactly the details of that experiment. But they were doing this one experiment to show that the Earth was moving through the ether. Therefore, one of the beams should have been shortened or delayed or bent or something like that. And obviously, nothing was bent or shortened or delayed. And therefore, they tried to prove, therefore, there's no ether. There's no substance ether. But the point is, ether is space. It's the subtlest of all the gross elements. What do I mean by gross? How is ether gross? Because you can measure space. You understand? Earth, water, fire, air, you can measure. Ether, you can measure too. Right?
Bhagavatam say the sound comes from ether.
Sound in ether. Yes, the sound can be transmitted in ether. Not and in space, it can be transmitted in space through electronic means. It's not that one means is the only means capable of transmitting sound. You understand? So electronic means, just like we are picking up radio signals from far distant galaxies. And there's this whole program called SETA, S-E-T-A. Anyone's heard of that before? That means search for extraterrestrial life. And they're picking up different radio beams from far away, and it's passing through space. So when you talk about sound, let's talk about it in a more broader sense, electromagnetic waves. Because when we think of sound, here's a little analysis for you scientists out there. We think of sound that we can perceive. For example, I think it's something between 30 hertz to about 20,000 hertz if you happen to be young, and as you get old, it goes down like that. But then you have animals who can perceive sound in a higher vibration. Like you have these dog whistles. Anyone's heard of a dog whistle before? That you can't hear the dog whistle. I mean, I'll give you an example. One time, I was being harassed by a dog. I was going on a morning walk, and this dog was harassing me. So, you know me, I got an electronic device. If you push a button, you don't hear the sound, but the dog just runs away screaming. Okay, he's on mute. Okay, so, and I used it. The dog just screamed and chanted Hare Krishna as he ran away. And so that means the dog was able to hear a sound that I'm not able to hear. So we're talking about, some electromagnetic signal. And that can be transmitted through light, that can be transmitted through radio waves, and through so many other means. So anyway, that's my understanding. But sound, like Prabhupada did define ether as space. It's a subtle substance, but we can measure it, so it's gross too. Whereas mind, you can't measure. Unless it's absent in the case of certain politicians that I can't mention. Then I can say there's no mind. There's no intelligence. False ego is pretty good. Anyway, there's no objective way to measure mind intelligence and no objective material way to measure mind intelligence and false ego that I know of. But there are objective ways to measure earth, water, fire, air, ether, like that. It is, that's why I have a measuring stick or whatever. You can measure it. Maybe not exactly, but to a certain degree, you can actually have pretty accurate measurements of these things. That's why they're called the grosser material elements. Ether would not be called a grosser material element if you couldn't measure it. And so sound is transmitted. But smell cannot be transmitted through space, empty space, can it? As far as I know. It can be transmitted through the air, but that's when you actually have particles in the air. The only reason you smell something, because that's the smell that's coming from the earth, got it? So the only reason you smell something is because there's little particles of earth floating in the air. right? No, yes, yes, no. Anyway, that's the only reason you smell something. And the taste, the water, there has to be some liquidity. Like if your tongue or mouth was completely dry, let's say you suck, not that I want it, but you take out all the saliva out of your mouth and there's nothing, everything's dry, and you touch something to the tongue that's completely dry, you're not going to taste it either. So there's a requirement of some liquidity. So all these elements have a particular sense object that's attached to it. Does that make sense? I mean, we're able to hear the sound that's coming from the space station. All those people are up there in space. And you can hear, and not only here, sometimes we watch the videos of them going outside and doing some fixing of the space station. Here's some more questions. Here's questions for my group chat. What is the Chaitanya Mongol? Chaitanya Mongol, Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. The difference, they're different literatures written by different devotees. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Goswami, and other great devotees wrote these different books. So, anyway, you can look that up. So, can a devotee, due to anarthas, become a demon in Krishna's pastimes? If he's not a pure devotee, yeah. But usually Krishna picks some pure devotees to act like demons for his pastimes. Okay? Don't worry about that. Actually, it would be nice to be a demon in Krishna's pastimes. Because at least you get killed by Krishna. All right, one more question from everybody. It's 7:07 in the evening.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna Madhava Das.
Madhava, that's good.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I think you said when we say sometimes this person is more intelligent than the other, it means we can measure intelligence, isn't it?
If someone is more intelligent than another,
if we make these kind of statements, so that means how can we say that unless we can measure that some way? Yeah.
we're talking about spiritual intelligence. Is there an objective way to measure that? We're not talking about material intelligence.
Okay.
I mean, we're not talking about like you know how to fix a car and I don't know how to fix a car. We're talking about realization.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's not really objectively measurable. Okay, that's good. Did I just see Nalini Kant there with a baby? Did you just have a baby, Nalini Kant? I can't hear you. Anyway.
We did some Karthik program at their place, and they were waiting to have baby. And just after Karthik program, she fall pregnant, and now she's here with the baby for examination. As your lecture was on, so I wanted to give you a blessing, or she can hear your voice.
Blessing to the baby. What's the baby's name?
Kiera.
Okay, we bless Kiera.
Thank you, Gurudev. And mother's name is Krishna.
Oh, that's nice. Kiera and Krishna. So we bless you. We bless Kiera to be a good devotee of Krishna.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Of her mother and Krishna. Okay.
Thank you, Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Okay, we'll see everybody later. Thank you very much, Rolf, for joining us. All glories to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.